Everyone, and welcome to A Cup of Hope. We have Hope Against Trafficking and Michigan Abolitionist Project who are hosting this event. Today's episode is focused on safely navigating the digital landscape. We're living in an age of technology where the majority of our time is spent on the internet. It's been embraced as just a part of our daily lives. But what we haven't fully embraced is the reality that the internet can be an extremely unsafe place where serious levels of manipulation and exploitation can happen if we're not educated and made aware of it. Thank you for joining us as we take a deeper look at the dangers of the internet and how we can protect ourselves appropriately. We are grateful to have a special guest, David Mehi, with Google, joining us for this important discussion. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to our panel by typing your questions into the Facebook Live event on either Hope Against Trafficking or the Michigan Abolitionist Facebook page, or through Hope Against Trafficking's YouTube page. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during this session. Please welcome today's panelists. I'm going to go ahead and... Hey, everyone. We have myself, Hannah McPeak. I am the Education Director at Hope Against Trafficking. We have Emily Johnson, our Program Coordinator at Michigan Abolitionist Project. And we have David Mehi, our special guest panelist. David Mehi has worked as a software developer and cloud specialist for over 20 years. He's worked with a variety of corporations, government organizations, small businesses, startups, and nonprofits. His current role is a cloud architect at Google Cloud and specializes in helping companies build their API programs and securely move their systems to the cloud. He's been involved in the Detroit tech scene for many years and aims to help support the community. So thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
So you guys, I'm so excited to be back. I feel like this month, since October, we had our last episode in the beginning of August, and I feel like it's been forever, but it's so nice to be back here and engaging in a great conversation with a nice cup of hope. So we're just going to have this conversation about navigating the internet safely, the digital world safely. It's such an important topic. And given that it's September and school is starting and we're all back sort of living our daily life, hopefully the kids are back in school live and hopefully we can continue that way. But we thought what a perfect time to talk about this. And so Emily, can you go ahead and share some statistics related to how COVID has impacted the digital world?
I would love to. Thank you, Hannah. So, as I'm sure we are all fully aware, COVID-19 pandemic has led to an inevitable surge in the use of digital technologies due to the social distancing norms and nationwide lockdowns. According to equalitynow.org, internet services have seen rises in usage from 40 to 100% compared to pre-lockdown levels. Along with the surge in the use of digital technologies, we are now witnessing a rise in online fraud, scams, intrusions, and security breaches. The pandemic has created a scenario of insecurity that is inviting fraudsters to exploit the crisis situation by extracting money or information or by creating vulnerabilities. Many users are beginning to rely on digital resources extensively, some for the first time. I know that's true, and are becoming targets for fraud and scams. To give a snapshot real quick, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has experienced a 106% increase in global reports of suspected child sexual exploitation to its cyber tip line compared with March 2019. That's crazy. Lockdown globally has meant people are spending more time online, and the volume of digital content being produced is increasingly exponentially, making it harder to scrutinize. So with all that, it's pretty clear that with this increased use online, it also leads to an increased risk of exploitation, fraudulent behavior, So we are so excited to have David with us today, the expert on this subject matter, to bring it all home and give us some tips on how to stay safe. So
let's just dive right in, if that's okay. And I have a question for you. How do predators gain entry online? What are some of the ways in which they do that?
Yeah, they actually use a variety of techniques to gain entry into your life, and they're trying to get some type of hook into your life, and it's different for different types of people. People are reached in different ways, so they'll try a variety of techniques to get people's attention and to be able to hook into your lives somehow. And they're basically looking for a response. A lot of times they'll send a whole set of bulk messages out, and then those that respond, or those that click the link or whatever, means that they're engaging, and then they can go forward from there and start getting information about that. So a lot of times they have some type of story that they have, and it's different for people. Like for adults, they may say, "Hey, you won this prize. Click here to redeem your prize," or they say something's wrong with your package. Click here to do that, and that engages you. So they'll find a variety of interests, and for teenagers, it may be something completely different. But they're looking for a way of engaging you, and they usually have a story. A lot of times they'll use a variety of techniques. So if you ever got a random voicemail or a random text message and they're trying to get a response out of you, sometimes they'll send fake emails that look real. It looks like a real bank account, email from your bank account, or email from PayPal or some other subscription site. It's not, but they want you to click on it, and that'll go to a fake site so they can capture your credentials and your email and password to log in. Other times it'll be more personal. If you're in a video game or a chat, or maybe you have a special interest that could be around video games, or could be about really any topic, and you join some type of chat group or whatever, they'll try to engage you. And sometimes it's hard to know whether they're a scam or not. It could be seeming like a very friendly person, or a lot of times they'll come to you as someone in need, like they need help with something, or they have a great idea and they want to engage with you. Oftentimes they may try to exaggerate their emotional state, so they may be super happy and excited about something that gets your attention, or they may be really sad and down, and you feel bad for them and you want to see if they're okay and stuff like that. And so they're looking for some type of reaction and response from you, and it could be a whole wide range of those type of things. But that's really what they're getting at is some attention. Once they get that, then they go back and forth and try to get more information out of you. They'll try to get bank accounts, but they might even try to find your names, your addresses, your things that can lead them, or clues that can lead them either to guessing your password, or finding out where you live, or just finding out more information so they can continue to build some type of profile around you and get things out of you, pretty much.
I mean, it's interesting because it's so much more subtle than you would think. When I think about this, I think about those stories that you hear about, like someone asking for your bank account information. I mean, the obvious stuff, right? That people still attempt to do. But there's oftentimes, the majority of the time, I mean, you have no idea that something may be happening, that it's pretty tricky. So it's like if you get something that you just are not sure about, especially if you're younger and you have parents that you could show and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Because it can be very sneaky.
Yeah, and for young people, it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, I go to this high school," and "Oh yeah, my math teacher, Mrs. Smith, my math teacher, she's really annoying." Then someone goes and looks, who are all the teachers named Mrs. Smith that teach math, and kind of figure things out that way. So it's it's just a lot of casual information that they can use to look up, in more detail.
And then I'm glad you brought that up, because David, I think you were the one that sent me an email link to an article by law enforcement, right? That was saying, please, when you're everyone gets excited about school starting. So people are posting, parents are posting their kids with these signs that are like, "Oh, first day back to school." And then there's all this information about their kid, their age, the school they go to, their likes,
color, all this stuff.
And so people can take that information and sort of profile targets potentially.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that is so
Thanks.
crazy. So I'm like posting that everywhere and telling everybody about it. But
Yeah.
even just things like that, where predators aren't actually like sending you anything, but you're kind of exposing some of that information. So then predators can gain entry by seeing that information and can sort of then start creating a profile and then will target you.
Yeah, exactly.
Really quick too, you had mentioned something about like a package, delivering a package, or I just remember that reminded me there was something going around Facebook a while ago where people were getting a text message saying like, oh, this package is supposed to be delivered to you. Can you please like tell us your address? Or it was some weird text message that was asking for people's address. And it blew up on Facebook as, oh, these are human traffickers. They want to know your address so they can come kidnap you. And it's kind of crazy sometimes how like something like that will happen and everyone is very quick to just jump to the most extreme, like, oh, it's human trafficking. But in most cases, like you will, I'm sure, share with us today, they're trying to get money out of you or, some other type of information it's not always human trafficking. It could be all types of fraud and
right. Yeah, it's it could be financial, it could be sexual, it could be those are probably the top two, but there's probably a variety of things that people they're trying to get out of you, but it's not as like they're going to show up at your front door. It's they're gathering pieces of information to build a profile to use.
And it could also even be political groups trying to gain your vote or gain your support. I mean, there's so many ways in which our social media and the internet, the digital space, uses to propagate perhaps whatever their goals are, or they have an agenda. Some people have an agenda and they just want your support or your agreement or your attention. So there's so many different ways in which this kind of activity happens,
and some of the top ones are what we call phishing. Those are like fake emails. So before you click on a link, especially if it's with your bank account, Netflix, PayPal, whatever, it's best not to click on the link, but to go to the website directly and then put in your information. So be very careful on the emails and links, especially if they're asking you to verify information or to log in. It's better just to copy the link and go to it directly. Smishing is like the text messages. So you get these random texts saying your package didn't get delivered, there was a problem, or whatever reason. Here's the link. If you click on the link, it could download something on your computer or just be a fake site. So don't even if you get something by your AT&T bill, just go to AT&T directly. Don't click on that link. You get the voicemails of like there's some problem with the text. The IRS is trying to get a hold of you or whatever. Obviously, you can ignore those things as well. But also, you just have to be careful about who you meet online and what information you give out to people. Even when you sign up for an online game or a website where they have you create a screen name, it's easy just to put in your birth date or the year you were born, the address, your street you grew up on, the name of your dog, your favorite color, those kind of things. They may seem innocent, but those are all clues that someone can use to either guess your password or to just another piece of information to guess your profile and to get more information about you.
Yes, sad phishing is a new term for me. I've heard of phishing, but sad phishing is a term used to describe behavior of someone making exaggerated claims about their emotional state to gain sympathy. Oh, my dog just died. I need money to pay for the funeral or whatever, or I have to pay for the vet bill, or that's interesting.
So you want to help, but
I'm always cautious of like even GoFundMe, campaigns. I don't know. It's just like, okay, I want to make sure this is legit, or it just seems so. Some of it can be really a simple scam and hidden sort of behind a good cause. But I had never heard of sad phishing until you said something about that, David, and it's crazy. But it's important to know. See, and that's the thing. Like the majority of people don't necessarily talk about these things and don't know. And maybe they've experienced it or seen it or understand it, but just don't have a name for it. And so now, there's a name for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so David, what are some good digital habits for families?
Yeah. So when I talk with families and when people ask me about what they can do to prevent, this type of hacking or type of infiltration into your lives, there's several areas, and unfortunately it's not like a silver bullet. I wish there was just one thing we can do to turn off all of this stuff, but it's really a layers and different things that you can do. And one of them is some education about some good digital habits, especially for families. And the company I work for, Google, has a program called Be Internet Awesome. And I think we'll provide the links, but it's beinternetawesome.withgoogle.com. You can Google it. And it's a really great program, and it goes through 5 areas that you could focus on or think about when you're online. And it has workbooks. It has like examples that you could walk through with as a family, through some examples and talk about what you would do in these certain type of situations or scenarios. There's an online game that makes it more interactive. Some of it's probably geared more towards middle school age, but it is really good for people of all ages, especially keep in mind. So I'll just mention a couple of those, but that's, if you're looking for much more information, that's the website, a resource where to go to. But the first one is they call Be Internet Smart or Be Smart, and really be careful about what you're posting and what you're sharing online. And everybody knows the person that shares too much on Facebook or on Instagram. You always have a friend or two that does that. But you do have to be very careful about what you share. And when you're talking with your children or your family, your spouse, about what is okay to be shared and what's not okay to be shared. And they have a couple examples of, say, okay, as a family, we're going on vacation. What are you allowed to share with your friends? What are you allowed to share online about your vacation? Do you wait till you get back to share the details? Or do you do it real time? And you say, oh yeah, I'm at Grandma and Grandpa's. We're doing this. We're taking a picture and a selfie. That may be okay if you're an adult, but that is giving real time information to somebody about where you're at. So you do want to be careful about what you share. And the kids, a lot of times kids will just share stuff, or people share stuff without you really even thinking about it. And then you find out a couple hours later. So that is something to be aware of. And yes, I'll put the link in here as well. Let's see. So that's probably the first thing, be smart about what you're doing and sharing. So the program that I mentioned has examples and scenarios that you can walk through as a family. And yeah, let me type this in real quick.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get you off track.
That's okay.
Write a note.
People aware of that. The next thing is be internet alert. And as we were talking about before about random text messages or people asking you questions or wanting to engage with you, you do have to be careful and be very, very smart on what is real and what is not real. And that's probably one of the biggest skills that a kid or child can learn, especially as they're growing up. And how do you know if something's real and someone's telling the truth, or if they're lying or trying to pull something over you? And there's ways that you can check, like the emails examples I gave earlier about getting an email from your bank. Well, you shouldn't necessarily trust that email. Go to the bank itself or call up their 1-800 number to ask them. How do you differentiate between an advertisement and real content? Because it gets tricky to know what did someone pay to be on that site, what content was paid versus what is just real information. Offers that are too good to be true, or things like that. So there are some exercises in that program to try to help teenagers determine what's real and what's not, because that's a real big part of not falling for something, is knowing whether it's real or not. Yeah, go ahead.
We hear that when we talk about human trafficking all the time. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. If someone's offering you some kind of job opportunity that's going to pay some crazy amount of money, or you're going to be a model, or especially job opportunities or a relationship that could just seem too good to be true. That's a red flag we see in trafficking too. So
yeah, and sometimes online it's like a sense of urgency. Like if you don't do this now, then the opportunity is going to be gone, and you must click here or you must do this. And then you may almost do it, and then a week later you may see the same opportunity saying the exact same thing. So yeah, it is definitely have to be smart. Being internet strong. So that's avoiding sharing personal information online. And it's easy to say, oh yeah, don't share your social security number to people. But it's a little more trickier than that. It's even coming down to the screen names. Make sure you don't have any personal identification stuff in your screen name. Create strong passwords. Be careful of the links, because sometimes you may think you're on a legit site where you're putting that information in, and it turns out you're not because you followed a link. So passwords are very important. Are you familiar with two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication? Have you heard of that?
A lot of
websites offer that now, like Facebook or your bank. It basically means when you put in your username and password, then you have to validate it again through either a text message or some other authenticator app. And so you put an extra passcode in, or you'll get a text message with a code. So make sure those are turned on in your most valuable accounts, because that adds another layer if they were able to guess your password. So this program goes through how to create secure passwords. What does that look like? Usually you want to use a capital letter, a lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. And it should be more than 8 or 10 characters long. And now a lot of parents I've talked to, they have a spreadsheet of their kids' passwords or their family passwords. And so you should have access to your children's accounts and passwords and things like that. And also it's something to work with them on, is how to create strong passwords. That's really the first layer of security on any of the accounts.
So you would say that having like an Excel spreadsheet with all your passwords can be fairly safe? What if I have like a document with all my passwords in my phone or something?
Yeah.
It's like the best, securest way to store all your passwords.
No, that is a very good point. And there are several programs out there, like a password manager programs, where you put the information about your accounts into that program, and it encrypts it and secures it. However, you need to have a password to get into that program, so you make sure you don't lose that. Yeah, absolutely. So there are some password managers out there. So I definitely recommend that. Even if you can keep it on a piece of paper, but then you can always lose it, or a piece of paper can be taken. Just a regular document on your computer can also be taken, so yeah, I guess you definitely do have to be careful on where you store those passwords.
Okay, I have another question. Actually, speaking of passwords, you know how when you're setting up a new site or whatever, sometimes the computer or that site will generate like a strong password for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend using that or creating your own?
You can. Yeah, usually it does create a strong password, so you can definitely use that.
It's pretty random. There's it's long, and
the thing I found
never
about
remember
that is it's hard to. It usually uses a scrambling of a variety of characters and special characters and stuff. So it's easy to copy and paste it wrong, or I typically tend to use words that I know and just combine them and add numbers and special characters to them. That way you can recognize it and remember it a little bit easier. So certainly you could use those passwords. I just find it a little easier to make up my own using words that I know or feel comfortable with.
And of course, like saving your password, like if I'm just in Google Chrome and I'm saving all my password to Google Chrome on all these websites, that has some risks with it too, I'm sure.
Yeah. If someone, it is safe, but if someone gained access to your computer, all the passwords are there in the browser, and so they can just pull them up. If you have just a personal laptop and everything's protected, it might be a little better. But even a lot of times, Chrome will save it to your profile. So if you logged into another computer with that profile, it'll keep all of that intact. Same with Safari. So.
Oh wow.
Nice.
Saving passwords to like random sites or sites that aren't that important, I think is okay. But like your bank or Facebook or something like that, you don't want to. It'll prompt you to save it, and you can say no or never, and it'll you can manually put them in. But the two-factor authentication that I mentioned will help with that. So even if it does automatically populate your ID and password, it can't do the two-factor authentication for you. So that's another barrier that would help secure that more.
Okay, last question. I've also heard that having a phrase as your password, like the lyrics to a song or a quote, like a 15, 20 character phrase, can be easier to remember and just as secure as like using a bunch of numbers and symbols and stuff. Have you?
So I would you still want to put in numbers and special characters, especially if it's from a popular song or whatever. They could still string together a combination of words. I do have this slide here. Maybe I can share it real quick. Just gives you an idea of, let's see, make sure I know how to share. Oh, wrong one. Yeah. This is just a chart on how long it will take to crack your password.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Okay. Oh.
So this just gives you an idea. It's, if you have these certain combinations of things, it's very easy to crack it. Once you start expanding the numbers, the size of your password, and you start mixing in numbers and lowercase, uppercase symbols, then it's
millions and billions of years.
Yeah. So that gives you a little idea on some of the guidelines for passwords.
That is very interesting. Okay. Oh, I gotta adjust some of my passwords. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so even if it's just a matter of adding a few numbers or asterisks or hashtag, then that'll make a big difference.
Wow. Okay. I know what I'm going to be doing soon after this.
That's good. Sure, but it will be worth it.
The other habit is be internet kind. So that's, as a family discussing what it means to be a good person, what it means to exhibit good behavior and positive behavior on the internet. Mm-hmm. Everyone's been on Facebook and seen the comments of whatever article or post, and the comment section, it can be very entertaining, but it can also be very mean, and it can go downwards very quickly. But some of those comments can come back to bite you in a variety of ways, and all sorts of stories of kids being denied admission to college because of a comment, and losing their jobs, or just getting into fights and people wanting to get back at you for a comment that you put under some article. So it's not even worth it. So there's some scenarios about, and also when you're text messaging, even when you're text messaging your spouse or friend, sometimes that doesn't get portrayed as how you meant it. So those are exercises on how to, consider that. And the last thing is be internet brave. So if you see something negative, especially as a teenager, is to say something. And it does take bravery, especially as a young person, to speak up and say something. And as parents, you have to be receptive and not get overblown and get super upset, but to be able to take it and to deal with it. So they didn't to know that they can be someone they have someone to turn to talk about some of those things, especially if they get into a little trouble or they feel like they're in a blackmail situation or a situation that's over their head, to be able to talk to somebody about it and not try to handle it on their own, especially for a young person. Mm-hmm. That's where they usually dig themselves more into a hole because they try to handle it on their own.
Wow, yeah,
I love how, as you were talking about each of these things, smart, alert, strong, kind, brave. And we talked a little bit about this before we started this episode, but I'm telling you, like, digital safety is a family ordeal, right? Mm-hmm. And there's multiple layers. You can put up the protections, the walls, the blocks, passwords, and all of that, and you've got to do that. But you can't just do that, right? It doesn't end there. Right. You've got to then impact the heart of the person, and like the kindness piece and the brave piece, education and awareness and knowledge and implementing and listening. And then you've got like which is also brave, is that conversation, that constant ongoing conversation between mom and dad and child, and like I always say, when you give somebody a device, I don't care how old they are, whatever the device is, it has to attach with that the parent and the parenting process, that relationship and that communication and all of that. So
Absolutely.
I love how what you just went through, like sort of covers all of those areas. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that's such an important piece.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly what you said. And this program has some ways of discussing that with giving scenarios of, okay, this happened, that's cool. What would happen? What would you do? What would you say? Be able to talk through some of that in advance before it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Just to add.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Emily.
Hannah and I have had a handful of episodes on pornography. So that's also, we've mentioned it several times before, that's also an important conversation to have with your kid about what these images or videos are. And because there's statistics out there of like kids as young as 7 are being exposed to pornography, just like by ads or pop-ups, or end up on the wrong website or YouTube.
Yeah.
There's all types of explicit content out there.
Yeah.
And kids are younger and younger that are getting exposed to this. So it's very important to have a conversation with your kids about that too. And then encouraging them to be brave in that situation, to tell you like, hey, this came up on the computer, or like, hey, I was at my friend's house and they were watching this or doing something and it made me uncomfortable, and how to navigate those situations. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. That's so important. The other thing I've said too to parents is, if you're going to give that phone to your child, are you ready to talk with them face to face about pornography? And it's like, and I'm like, no, I'm serious. Yeah. I'm so serious, because, if you don't equip your kids on how to react to that, because they're going to see it. So how are they supposed to know how to react to it unless you're telling them, unless they're being educated on how to do that, you know? So
yeah, if you can do it in advance before it happens, that's
because that spreads like wildfire. Fire at a school. One kid accesses this website and then shows all his friends like, oh my gosh, this is
Yep. And that can you talk to your kid about the fact that they might like it? What do they do with that? How do they reconcile that? How do they, redirect that and work through that piece? So, but okay.
What about video games, David? There's a lot of unknown about video games, the harms, risks.
Yeah.
What is this world?
Yeah, video games are crazy. They're not like video games that we may have grown up with, like Mario Brothers and things like that. They're very different now. And I was reading a statistics where the video game industry it's 2020. It's bigger than the movie and the sports industry combined. So if you think about Hollywood movies and going to the theater and all, the NBA, NFL, all those industries, the video game industry is even larger than that. And at least in 2020, mainly because of the pandemic. But even now that things are picking back up, it's still very, very large. 180 billion in sales last year. So they have the top developers and top talent in the industry that's designed to create these storylines. And they often borrow from entertainment. So your favorite movie like Star Wars or whatever, they'll incorporate those things into the game. And they're really becoming part of the culture and incorporating very popular parts of the culture, the music, dancing, fashion, things like that. And it's really becoming a trendsetter as well. And the kids are growing up on it. And then, it can be a lot of fun. I'm not saying that video games aren't fun. And I played video games a lot as a kid as well. They're just designed differently now. All the games are connected to the internet. They're designed to be social. You're going on this mission with your friends and you're defeating the bad guys and you're winning and you're earning these things, points or whatever. And you're doing it with the friends or with these group of people. And it can be a lot of fun. But of course, there are risks. And, there's actually a variety of risks. Some of it is like emotional risks. So there is cyberbullying that takes place in the video games where someone's stealing your points or stealing your kills. If you're on a team, they're bullying you. You can pretty much expect if you join. So a lot of these games are interactive and social, and they'll wear headsets and they're on video as well. So it's almost like a video conference. Like we're doing a video conference now, but you're playing a video game together. We all have our characters and we're going on these missions, and you're talking with each other and saying, yeah, get that guy behind the tree and I'll go this way. And it can be a lot of fun, but it can also be, you can pretty much, in certain groups, I shouldn't say it can be a lot of fun, but in some groups, you can pretty much expect to hear any type of bad language, racist language. It's pretty much a free for all because a lot of times you don't know who the people are. And so there's no repercussion for saying these things because you may not ever see them again. So it's one thing if you're getting together with your friends from class, and especially with COVID, that may be the social activity that kids can do now. Not to say that's bad. The problem is when you start getting into these environments with people that you don't know, and that's where all the things that we talked about earlier of getting someone's engaging you and asking you for information. But it may seem like a good person. You may join this online video game, and you're playing with someone who's really helping you and giving you information and helping you in the game. And every time you log on, they're there and they're very helpful. Well, over time, you build a relationship of trust with someone that you don't know, and you start sharing information and creating a bond. And that's where the danger is if you don't know who they are. And it's very easy to mask your identity online. Let's see. So the online chat is really strong. Online predator, that's where the predators come in. They're building this relationship with you in the game. And then that transitions to outside world. Now I know adults that have made friends online and they meet up with them and they form these great friendships. But as young people, there's a lot of danger if they don't know who they're dealing with. Of course, there are health risks. You can easily get addicted. You get very angry if you're losing, and that you're taking your anger out on the nearest thing that's in the room. You're not getting the right sleep. It's depression, anxiety. There are all sorts of risks like that. So we want to limit the use of video games. It is tricky because video games now there's a thing called esports where you can join a video game competition, and I think schools, if they don't already have this, some do, and I think it's only growing. This esports industry is growing, where instead of joining your football team, you're joining a Fortnite team and you're competing against other schools, and you're winning competitions and you're earning money, which can be good. I'm not saying it's not good. It's just a new age of sports. But there are a lot of risks, and there's also injuries as well. Even though it may be hard to think that you can get injured while playing a video game, but there's emotional injury, plus just hitting the buttons all day long or not sitting or not moving that can cause injuries as well. So
carpal tunnel could be a huge,
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine as you get older, like the carpal tunnel is going to be massive.
Yeah.
And the risk of addiction is online gaming addiction. Is that like a verified mental health disorder yet?
If it is not, I'm sure it will be soon. I think there are
Along the lines of
counselors and
gambling
therapists out there that do that.
Because there's actually there is some, like, I think some data out there, but there was a speaker that came to a family conference that I was at, and he was talking about the whole video game industry and the impact that it's had on like dads being fathers. That was just the example that he had brought up for what there was this one dad who was at some sort of speaking engagement that he was speaking at. He was talking about video games, electronics, addictions, routine, all that stuff. And a woman came up to him and said, well, could my husband possibly be addicted? Here's what's happening, and like, he lost his job. He would disappear with a laptop for hours in the bathroom. Like, she's like, he just stopped functioning.
Socially,
he stopped. Right. He stopped going out. He stopped engaging with the kids because he was constantly going to the bathroom for hours at a time.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's completely destroyed our marriage.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a very real issue. And yeah, I mean, we're talking about our youth, but we've seen lives become sort of ruined because of this kind of an addiction. It's very similar to, and the brain activity that happens when you're playing video games is very similar to what happens when you're abusing a drug and eating a lot of sugar. I mean, so it's this physiological response to, with the dopamine release and serotonin levels and all that stuff. And all that, the gray matter in your brain expands and decreases, in the same way with playing video games as it would with any kind of other physical, substance.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of health risks involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you get so competitive, you want to find ways of getting ahead. And so a lot of times people will download what they call cracks or ways of getting ahead in the game that may get you extra, levels or points or whatever. They call them cheats or crack games, things like that. However, a lot of those games contain malware and viruses. And now that if you download something and you're not sure where it is, but you think it gives you an edge in this game, you've installed it. Now it gives you whoever created that cheat or crack now gives you access to your computer. It can spy on you. You may be installing spyware that you're not aware of. Things like that. So it's another way of entry into your computer itself. It's hard to gain access to your computer directly, but if you give someone access and you say download something, no one's going to just download something. But if they say, oh, you're going to get a new level with this game or whatever, install this, and it's really a crack or or spyware. And even people, you can pay people to play games for you, so you're giving them access to your account. But who knows who that is, and they can steal your information and steal your account from you. So those, as you get deeper, it opens you up a lot more to predators that may be targeting you for whatever reason.
Wow. Wow, that's insane. I'd never heard of like these cracks or that you could actually be downloading spyware for people to spy on you through your computer.
And that opens you up
terrifying.
to, now they're capturing your audio and video, and then now they have evidence to do whatever. In some games, if it's on PlayStation or something, you can't do that. There's limitations. But if it's on your personal computer and you're downloading that stuff, then there's this website I'll put in the chat. It's called National Online Safety.
And he's putting this in our chat, but Hannah and I will publicize all these links.
Put it all on.
Our Facebook.
But there's so many apps and games. Like people say, what apps should you be careful of with games? There's so many, and they're always new ones. So this website here has guides and parental guides to all of the most popular apps and games. And it goes into detail about the risks of the app or the game, and it shows you how to change the settings and what to be careful of. And it may be a little confusing for a parent to log into Fortnite or one of these games and try to play around with the settings. They may not be able to find the settings because they don't know, maybe not be familiar with computers that much. This will give you an idea of what to check, what to look for, and some guides for that. So that's definitely a great resource to check out.
That's great.
The featured article is what parents need to know about social media scams.
Yeah,
awesome. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, it's a really good resources here. And again, we will make sure that people have access to that. We'll put it out. Okay, so last question. What can we do to protect ourselves and our kids? And we pretty much talked through with it, but to kind of close it all out, tips for prevention, what are things that we can actively be doing to prevent activity like this?
Yeah, like those good digital habits I mentioned before. When I talk with parents, I'll show this quick diagram. Let me just pull this up real quick. share my screen.
And really, while you're looking to do that, like just how the community can respond to by making it easy to report, law enforcement being trained on how to handle these things, but kind of
Yeah.
closer to home to the parent and to the child, like what are some real quick things that they can do?
So it is confusing as parents. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I have friends I went to college with are also in IT, and their teenagers they put all these protections in place, and their teenagers still find ways around it. So it's not easy, and especially if you're not familiar with computers and the internet, it can be overwhelming. And all I can say is you need to dedicate some time to learn, some nights and weekends, or pay someone to help you, or get a family member or something or a friend involved, because it can be tricky to set some of this stuff up. We did all the good habits that we talked about earlier. There's some things that you can protect. You can use there's apps that you can install on the devices that check for spyware and malware. There's a device you can put or an app you can put on on the phone that anytime they install something on the phone, you get an alert and you can approve whether they install it or not. So so that prevents them from installing the software that you're not aware of or you don't approve of. Protecting the data that's coming in and out of your house. That's where the router comes in, that you can set parental controls and filters on the router, or even using a VPN server that'll do an additional filtering on the content. So those are some of the ways that you can build in protections. Like I said, it's really a layered approach. But those are some of the, as far as some of the things that parents can do at home to help that. The other things are just really staying involved and being curious and having an open conversation about what apps they're using, what online thing they're using. Some parent, it's really up to the parent to put in the right rules. I know parents that you can only use the computer or the phone during certain hours, and they have protections on the phone, so the phone actually turns off during those particular times, or the Wi-Fi is connected to a timer where it's only enabled during certain hours. You have to use the computer in the living room, things like that. It may be good for kids of certain age, but as they get teenagers, it probably won't work as well. It is tough though. If you do get in trouble with online, going to the police. I've heard stories of where there's some kind of situation online at school. They call the police. The police are like, we have 20 of these cases sitting on my desk, and I have these traffic violations, and there was a burglary and a burglar, and so there's all these other things that are going on, and it's not a real priority for us. And sometimes that you might be able to get the right law enforcement involved, but it's a lot of times you may not be able to. So a lot of it is, I know parents that do random phone checks, have a listing of all their password and accounts. They check them periodically. It is, it's challenging. It's like a whack-a-mole. Like you really have to keep on top of it and dedicate some time to catch up and be involved. And unfortunately, it is hard to regulate. There's not like one law or regulation you can pass, and it's not one setting on your computer. I think it's a combination of all these things. It's really part of the community as well, of the policymakers and the police and the school officials and even the tech companies to, over time, help with this and provide better ways of monitoring and tracking and reporting and dealing with some of the situations that happen online.
It's interesting that you just brought up like legislation and policy in terms of internet safety and protections. Because I saw that Apple was coming out. They may start monitoring in some way, like all the photos that are uploaded to their Apple Cloud to help law enforcement find, child sexual abuse material.
Yeah.
And then just like, I think Verizon, I was at the Verizon store recently, they have like a kids safe phone or something. So some phones come with all those parental controls.
Yeah.
Right when you buy the phone, which is really nice.
Yep.
And then a lot of kids use actually Google Chromebooks at school.
Yep.
Right? Do those come with like automatic kind of safety controls Or do you have to do a lot? Do parents and teachers have to set that up?
Yeah, unfortunately, the Chromebooks don't come with that enabled. There are certain like default settings that may have some certain restrictions, but it would be up to the school to pre-program or pre-configure those before they hand them out.
Yeah.
So, and it's tricky because those are all good things that tech industry can do, but there's also the privacy issue, and there's always
Yep.
that open debate.
Pushback. Yep.
But yeah, so I think the technology is there, but it's, people are a little concerned on how it would be used elsewhere. So there's always that debate.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think that this was such a great dialogue about this issue, and I'm so appreciative, David, of your time and willingness to come and share and educate us and provide us with just some really good and important information. Emily and I will definitely be posting these resources out so everybody can have access to them.
Right.
And we're just so thankful. This was a great episode. And people are able, you can, share this link from YouTube or Facebook with your community. That's another big thing that people can do. And all of our listeners, you can share this and just keep saying what you're learning and sharing it so that everybody can have access to this kind of this conversation. So thank you so much. And please share a cup of hope today if you can. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.